Hello everyone, and welcome to the bonus videos for Let's Play the Journeyman Project 3 Legacy of Time. We finished the game, but we're not quite done with it. You see, we kinda missed a bunch of stuff, and some of them have been brought up by you, but the amount of stuff that we missed is kinda big for each of the time zones, and each of them are going to start by going back to the ruined time zones. Because, unfortunately, I missed some stuff in each of them. Didn't think I did. And the first one is actually going to be right up here. It's very easy to see why I missed this specific hint that Arthur gives you. And the reason is because I've played this game far too much. This hint is not made for someone like me who has played this game multiple times all the way through. It's meant for someone new, and meant for someone who has never played with this kind of user interface before, the spherical virtual reality-esque engine that this game has. Because the hint is this.
Make sure you don't trip on that rope. That was a subtle hint to look down. About as subtle as a hammer.
There's a couple of hints like this that Arthur gives you. One that we've actually seen before in the main playthrough was in Shangri-La when he told you to look up and see some symbols in the steam tunnels. There's a number of them. Now we're not going to go through all of that because, well, we already have all of the other hints, so forget those. But yeah, they're actually well-made, proper hints for the game to actually give you. A lot of people are going to be looking at this and not really going to be seeing that you can actually look up like this or look down. And in the manual, actually, it does say that you can actually go to specific hotspots in order to show where the next place to go is by simply hitting the space bar. Like so. Meaning that panning the camera is almost unnecessary except for looking for items and such. There's a number of these kind of hints that we actually missed, and we're going to be looking at them, well, momentarily. A lot of them were actually in Atlantis. So yeah, that's the only thing we missed in Destroyed Atlantis, and is a good start for what we actually missed throughout our game. So let's head back to, well, yesterday, and travel through Atlantis proper. It also gives me an excuse to use the fly-through videos over and over, so that's always a plus. Now, if you remember, all the way up here, we have our route to get over to the Egyptian ship and board it from there. But I completely missed the hint that was kind of being said by Arthur. We did get it, but I didn't really listen to it, which said that we have actually two options. One was to go over to the Egyptian ship, and the other one is actually to look down here and climb down the crane itself. Something I completely missed. It takes a little while, but, of course, stupid little me, I didn't use the space bar at all. Never felt a reason to, but it does actually point you up to this direction. It also takes a good long time in order to actually do that, but we can get a completely new view of everything, which is really nice. Another thing we actually missed is actually if we went down the crane but didn't really know about going down the ship as our second idea, we could actually get a comment about going over to the mast and heading down that way.
If you really want to check out that ship, I seem to remember that part of the crane arm jutted near the ship's mast. Maybe we could scale the crane again and climb down the mast to board the ship.
Now this is something I'm really bad for not doing and not really thinking But then again, this was the first time zone that I actually did, so of course I didn't do it. And that is coming here without any money and talking to the ferryman. Now, of course, we could just do this with the beggar, but we need this guy in order to actually get around Atlantis. What happens if we don't have any money for the ferry?
Oh, where can I take you?
The Windmill.
That will be 10 dromoi.
We get a sorry, no money option, which is new and interesting.
Sorry, I've got no money.
Oh, come back when you find some money then, huh?
Yep, finding money.
We know this taxi doesn't run for free. We need to find some local currency. Maybe there's a native around here that knows the exchange rate. Some things never change. The rich ride the ferry, the poor learn to swim.
Unfortunately, there's no swimming mechanics in this game, so we're out of luck there. But yeah, completely missed that. Now, in my main playthrough, I actually purposefully passed by the gaff multiple times. And for some reason, a hint would just not pop up for me. And it's in the same route of hints like, well, missing the rope. Where you go by it, and then you're supposed to get a nice little light bulb when you're actually seeing it and then not pick it up and go past it, and it'll say this.
I just thought I'd let you know that you walked past a gaff back in that alcove.
That's another thing about a lot of things that I missed in this game. Sometimes they just don't want to show up for me, and it's a little bit of an annoyance. But here we have the captain. The captain is another interesting character, and we missed another hint with him, simply because of just how the game decided to construct itself.
Do not frown upon me with those eyes. If we were in my country, it is you who would be the prisoner.
I did also want to just talk to the captain a little bit more. It's always enjoyable. Now, if you remember when we talked to the captain before, when we talked to him about nasty weather, he gives this response.
Looks like nasty weather.
I've been instructed not to speak to anyone but my contact.
He talks about his contact. And when that's supposed to happen, and we don't know about beggar or anything, another hint bubble is supposed to show up, and it says this.
When we told him about the weather, he said that he was instructed to speak only with his contact. He must be waiting for someone in particular. Very intriguing, yes?
There's also another way of saying, why am I tied up? And there's actually a couple of areas where there's alternate lines, but they just don't want to play. Either because of the game, or it's just not been programmed in. Don't know why. But it sounds like this.
And why are you tied up?
Another small thing we missed is that we didn't talk to the captain as the Windmill Keeper a second time. Here's just what he says.
What is it now, Amun?
In addition, after a certain point in the game, I just kind of foregoed the dock altogether, especially when I started picking up first-class Atlantean disguises. But if you come back here with at least one of the Atlantean disguises, the ones that you can get, Saros unfortunately is not someone because by that time the beggar's gone, and you talk to him, you do get a little bit of different responses coming out of Arthur.
Looks like nasty weather.
Ah, you must be the town weatherman. The more things change.
And you know also the beggar.
Yes, you may be right. No, I don't think so. Yes, it may even rain.
But why should the little rain concern us? We Atlanteans are people of the sea, after all. Now, if you'll excuse me, the festivities have left me rather spent. 4 straight days are 3 too many for a man of my years.
The Windmill Keeper is also someone I didn't talk to as a first-class Atlantean. And it gets rather fun.
How dare you burst into my home? You have no reason to be here. I must ask you to leave immediately.
Are you sure?
Get out!
Yep, you're sure. Okay, good. Now, when you finish up with the Windmill Keeper, and you do things a little bit differently than I did in my playthrough, you can actually find a couple more hints around the windmill. Specifically, back over by our infamous rug over here. And not just that, not just with the rug is still the rug, but inside the box right here. If you didn't see these schematics before you talked to the Windmill Keeper, you actually get a couple more hints out of it.
These must be Amun's plans of how to access the secret passage. Looks like he rigged the windmill to open the passage for him. Or it's an elaborate scheme to kill the Roadrunner. With these plans, we should be able to get into that passage. All we have to do is make sure that one end of the rope is attached to the floorstone covering of the passage and the other end is attached to the windmill's shaft. When it turns, the rope should wind around the shaft and open the passage for us.
So yeah, that pretty much just shows you how to actually make the thing work. You're also supposed to get another hint from Arthur, but I'm not able to make that work for some reason, about passing over the rope a couple times and he'll tell you to look down. Here's the hint.
Look on the floor, Gage. One of the stones has a rope attached to a metal ring.
Now that we have the espionage part of the time zone out of the way, we can head over and start making our medallion in that area, trying to get into the temple proper. There's actually a hint that I actually missed, mainly because I didn't come here at like breakneck speed, I guess.
Those symbols must be labels of some form. Maybe the nice lady would know more.
Also, I didn't talk to the olive oil vendor yet. In addition, there's the olive oil down here. Once you're able to find a use for it, and you get all the hints and wonderful business with it, if you look down at it, and go right past it, Arthur will chime up again, saying, "Hey!"
I just thought I'd let you know that you walked past a container of olive oil.
Like, yeah, that is what olive oil looks like. You better go back and actually pick it up and do something with it. So now about making our medallion. There's actually another hint for getting our medallion really early on, before we actually do anything with clay. In order to get this hint, you have to go a really roundabout way of actually getting it. In order to do this, you first have to make the full connection between this pottery, the symbol there, and the symbol matching the temple as well. So you need to go back there at least twice in order to actually make this happen. Then you have to go to the potter's shop and use the clay press, but don't actually take the clay. Then you come back here, look at the print.
Let's grab some clay from the potter's shop and press it onto the vase symbol.
And then you get that hint. Now, once we have all of our materials all together, minus the gold leaf, there's other hints that we could get. And this depends on whether or not you've actually been to El Dorado beforehand. In our playthrough, we just never went to El Dorado beforehand, and then we got that hint. If you did go, you can get two different hints, depending on how far you go into El Dorado, I guess. One is by actually just seeing the scribe working with gold.
The scribe in El Dorado was working with gold leaf. He might have some to spare.
And the second hint is about that El Dorado is riddled with gold.
The temple in El Dorado was dripping with gold. Maybe they have a little to spare for our medallion.
So you get all your materials, you have your gold leaf, you're good to go there. Now, we need to get the potter out of the way. I really should have done it in this order because I missed a complete hint chain out of this.
We need to use the kiln to make a medallion, but I don't think he's going to just let us walk up and bake a cake.
Maybe we could make him an offer he can't refuse.
This is kind of the thing I should have been showing off, is that the fact that you actually can't go over there because this guy's in the room. complete privacy in order to make pottery, I guess.
The potter isn't letting anyone near his work. Since trying to sneak around him would be a physical impossibility, we should start thinking of ways to try to get him out of the shop.
He has a huge hitbox. It encompasses the entire pottery shop. The rest of the hints is actually when you're starting to talk to Talos.
We know he wants to go to the festival. Maybe we could take advantage of that and entice him to go somehow. Here's a thought. Trick him into thinking that you'll watch the pots for him, huh? Now we need to assume the guise of someone he would trust. How about the pound cake man? Or the olive oil vendor?
And from there you proceed as normal. Now this hint was also missed.
A Betty Crocker you're not, but you have to realize that the clay won't cook until you turn the wheel and rotate the Lazy Susan.
So you make your medallion, you come all the way back to the temple with the gold medallion. And then you're faced with the guard. Now we've done a couple of different combinations of giving medallions and stuff to the guard, but one different combination we haven't done is a second-class citizen with a gold medallion. What happens then?
No second-class citizens in the temple.
But I have a loophole?
The edicts are very clear. No second-class citizens, even with a gold temple medallion.
Unfortunately, it still doesn't work.
Well, then it would seem that I'm not going to the temple.
Good day.
There's also a hint that goes along with this.
Apparently our homemade medallion is not enough to gain entry to the temple. We need to assume the guise of a full-fledged Atlantean citizen.
Another thing we missed is actually talking to the guard as the beggar a second time.
I do not see you either, Padros.
It's a pretty interesting line from the guard, I must say. Just kind of play on the blindness and all. But there's actually one last thing for now that we're going to look at for the guard. We're going to come back to him a little bit later. And that is going as a first-class citizen, but not giving him the medallion.
Your medallion, citizen?
This may actually work with the second-class citizen as well, but if you remember what the guard tells you about what deliveries are being made to the temple, you'll know that he is expecting deliveries from the olive oil and potter shops, right? Well, this is actually one of the very few times in the game where you're actually able to open up your inventory while in the middle of a conversation, because you're able to give him an additional item. And that is the pitcher. Pottery. Given to him.
Do you expect to gain entry with that? The real delivery is a dozen pots, 10 times that size.
It's almost an Easter egg in itself, when you actually really pay attention to the dialogue being spoken, but I don't really count it as an Easter egg. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. Will I get the information? Probably not. So, let's go into the temple now. Back into the upper temple, I guess you could call it, we have the healing water here. Now, the only reason we're actually here is because there's additional animations that you can get depending on what kind of containers you have at this point. We've already shown off the bowl with the healing water, but you can also show off the pitcher. And not only that, if you really want to go mixing between the time zones, you can also pick up the alms bowl, or just go back, you know, to the beggar and just pick that up because you know it's there. And you can also pick up healing water with the bowl. You have 3 different containers in this game, and each of them are able to do its proper job. Now we're actually over on this side with the altar pushed back in order to get down into the inner temple, and the reason for that is because we're able to actually see this guy from a different angle. We're actually able to do this from when this isn't actually moved, but when it's moved, you're able to do something different. And it's actually a little bit more convenient if you're doing it in a specific order like I was. You see, when you get to Shangri-La and you're needing the healing water, this is how you would actually kind of get it when you come back. It just kind of saves the trouble of opening this and moving all of that and coming back over there in order to get the healing water from the bowl over there. So you can actually see Arthur's chicken head from a good angle. Enjoy some animations of picking it up. You can only pick up healing water from this direction if you have the doors closed and the altar moved back. If the altar is in its regular position before you do anything, you're not able to use this. This angle also gives, well, some comments.
Yes, well, you see, I killed all those bulls with my bare hands, but that chicken, oh, goodness gracious, he nearly beat me to death. But who's cackling out of the side of their beak, Not Foghorn.
I'm kind of sad that I missed comments like that in the main playthrough, but I'm glad I was able to actually find them properly and show them off overall.
Ew. If that's what healing water did to a chicken.
Ooh, what is it gonna do to the rest of us, huh? Well, apparently nothing. Meant for humans, not for chickens. Speaking of picking up oil, we passed by the oil and we didn't actually pick up anything. When you have the pitcher and bowl, you also get another hint.
What are you holding out for? Maple syrup? Use the pitcher.
It's more delicious that way. But in terms of actually being, lubrication, maple syrup's not going to cut it. We've already seen the pitcher into here, but of course, like the rest of them, you're able to use any container in order to pick up the oil. It even looks like it's in the bowl when it's doing the animation. The alms bowl as well. The butter boiler, on the other hand, no, we can't use it. Now, Atlantis, on a technical standpoint, has 2 large things for you to do. One is to find the secret passage in order to get into the inner temple. The other one is to make the medallion in order to get up to the temple up here. Usually I tend to do the secret passage beforehand, but if you do it the other way around, you get one other hint.
We haven't found the Windmill Keeper's secret passage, but he did tell us that the water drains from this temple and floods under his windmill. So this must be the source. With this amount of water draining, we probably won't be able to travel in the secret passage. We'll have to shut up the water first.
And that's what we'll be able to do. Now, doing everything in Atlantis and heading into the inner temple, we're back with the murals. Now, you get a comment with the mural, but you get a different comment if you never spoke with the olive oil vendor. I just have her disguise, but I never spoke with her, so you get a different one.
This mural might be depicting some form of religious ceremony. The basin at the top is filling up with water from the geyser. What's interesting to me is that pyramid object inside the water column. It seems to be suspended inside the water.
It is. And I kind of didn't make the connection before with the mural, is that The healing water is actually healing water because it's rushing past the Galeth, or the legacy piece, and it's being imbued with its healing powers. That's what I get for, like, I kind of pay attention, but for some things, I technically don't. In addition, we have the mural over here, right next to that one, showing the 3 legacy pieces. Now, when you examine this mural, Arthur will translate it, linear A, all this good stuff, and you get the hint depending on... And naturally, this would be your first time zone, so you would get that hint that we saw before. But if you've already been to the other time zones, and this is technically your third, because you can do the time zones in any order, you actually get a different hint.
From my understanding, this mural is showing where the Susiqui hid the powers of the legacy across space and time. The bull symbol represents the power of life hidden within Atlantis. The lotus symbol is the power of matter in Shangri-La, and the Coatl image is the power of time hidden in El Dorado.
It's honestly rather cool. The final mural here doesn't have anything other interesting, but the thing I want to show off with this mural is that, well, a lot of it is going to be you trying to examine it in terms of the cursor, which means that panning the camera out of it is rather difficult. But if you actually press the Alt key on your keyboard, at least for the Windows version, you're able to get rid of any examination symbols that are on your cursor, and you're able to just pan around no problem whatsoever. Rather helpful, and something I never actually used before. Never really had a need to, just like the spacebar. So now we come to our good buddy Saros. Once more. Now if you remember, if we do any other disguise other than the beggar, Padros, we get yelled at. And there's actually a different hint that you are supposed to get with Saros that, again, did not show up for me.
He did say that he will only deal with Padros. Try that, guys.
Now it's time for something fun to do. Because, of course, we needed to get Saros' disguise before we could actually talk to him, but due to the constraints of the playthrough, and technically the game overall, you're never really going to be using Saros' disguise ever. And that's kind of an interesting thing to me, because in terms of everything else, Saros, in terms of all the disguises in the game, he is the weirdest one of them all. But then again, Atlantis is also unique in itself in terms of the construction of, like, the time zone and how you get around it. Each being, like, specific nodes, compared to Shangri-La and El Dorado, everything being available to you at once. But the fact that you get Saros, who is also your 8th disguise, not counting the chameleon suit, 5 minutes before the end of the actual time zone, is rather jarring to me. And in addition to that, because you don't get to really utilize Saros, you miss a lot of stuff. So we're going to take that time right now in order to explore everywhere else with Saros and see what interesting tidbits we actually get with him. I think it's really because of that reason, and also looking at Atlantis as a whole. Not only do I like this time zone a lot in terms of just history in itself, but the construction and just kind of layout of the time zone is kind of my favorite overall because of its uniqueness in itself.
Ah, where would you like to go?
Let's head back to the temple first. Why not?
The temple.
That will be 10 dromoi, please.
We should at least use Kashani once, and let's do it with Saros. A new traveler with him. No new dialogue with him, of course. Not like with the one-off with the first-class Atlantean being the potter or the olive oil vendor, or even the guard.
Here it is. Take care now.
So we're back at the temple gate. We are a Templar now. What does this mean to the guard, I wonder?
Forgive me, Your Holiness, but you must enter the temple grounds immediately. Quickly, Saros, before your brethren see you out here. I will open the lock for you.
And there you have it. Saros is an instant key into the temple. And logically he should be, because you needed to get into the temple in order to actually get him.
Saros, you're going to get us both killed. Please go back into the temple and do not leave again.
Now, who says I'm actually going back into the temple at all? Heck, I should go and see the locals. And by locals, I mean our new captured friends. Like the captain. How you doing?
Must I be molested to no end? I am not some wild beast chained for your curiosity. If you will not release me, then go!
Well, you're fun. That response from the captain is one that you get for every single one of the first class Atlanteans that you get. So it's not really that special, but of course with the Templar, I guess it's kind of the best one to choose. The guard, I guess. Now, another sad thing with Saros is that at the point when you get him, a lot of the people are actually gone that are interesting to talk to. Like, I kind of wanted to hear you as Saros speak to the beggar. That would have been interesting. And also, you know, there's the pottery guy, Talos. But he's gone as well. So that doesn't give you a lot of options. But, if you remember, our nice olive oil vendor here is lovely in terms of revering the higher-ups. I wonder how she would react by seeing a Templar. Apparently she's only seen a Templar once, and that was far away for like a second. I'm here to purchase some of your wares.
Great Mother, my eyes are not worthy to look upon you.
Huh. Well, that's certainly a reaction. As Saros, you can't actually speak to the olive oil vendor because she kind of freaks out and has a heart attack. That is until you leave, and then you can just repeat the process over and over. Well, what happens if I'm not looking at her? Like, I'm gonna just inspect your work for a moment. Oh. Okay, she gets back to work. I can hear the squishing noises. Good. Or not. Okay. That's just the feeling that is weird from doing all of that, I guess. But that is what it's like wandering around as Saros. Not as flashy and not as wonderful as you think it would be, but you do get a couple of interesting things out of walking around as Saros. One of the more interesting disguises being very exclusive and pretty forgetful when you're just thinking about completing the game. Now let's return to the clock here. There's actually an extra hint right at the very end that apparently did not show up for me for some reason, of course. It's always for some reason that I'm not able to get some hints and comments, and no matter what combination I kind of try in order to figure out something inside my head, it doesn't really happen that way. But it happens when you're actually just turning the wheel so it thinks it's tomorrow when the eclipse is supposed to happen. But what you're supposed to get is also another hint about, well, where the Galeth is, and not realizing what's wrong.
Whoa, hold on here. Where's the Gaelith? That should have done it. Something's not working. Where's our toy surprise? Well, I guess they do make things like they used to.
So that's another hint that is kind of elusive for me. Now, while doing this, I actually started to think about this clock a little bit more in detail. So, now the final thing I would like to cover in this video is something that I was not expecting to do in the first place. And it has to do with the clock mechanism itself that controls the water entering the temple, the final puzzle of Atlantis. When playing through, I did not give much thought for it, but it turns out that there may be some historical inspiration behind the piece, as well as the meaning behind Saros' own name, and the connection his name has to the clock device. So, I think it's time that we have an impromptu history segment that will discuss the object known as the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism is a strange ancient artifact to people, mainly because it does not seem like it could come out of ancient times. It is an ancient Greek artifact made by scientists and dates between 150 to 100 BCE. In 1974, British science historian and Yale University professor Derek DeSola Price concluded from gear settings and inscriptions on the mechanism's faces that the mechanism was made around 87 BCE and was lost only a few years later. This machine has the oldest known complex gear mechanism and is sometimes called the first known analog computer. The reason why people do not seem to think it is as ancient as it really is that other artifacts with this level of technological complexity and workmanship did not appear again until the 14th century, when mechanical astronomical clocks began to be built in Western Europe. The Antikythera mechanism was discovered in a shipwreck off Point Leucadia on the Greek island of Antikythera. The wreck had been found in April of 1900 by a group of Greek sponge divers. They retrieved numerous artifacts including bronze and marble statues, pottery, unique glassware, jewelry, coins, and the mechanism itself, which were transferred to the National Museum of Archaeology in Athens for storage and analysis. Jacques Cousteau also visited the wreck in 1978 and found other parts on the seafloor. More recent pieces of the mechanism have been found as late as 2005, lost in storage at the museum, believe it or not, undiscovered since the initial recovery. The reason for this is because the original mechanism apparently came out of the Mediterranean as a single encrusted piece. Soon afterwards, it fractured into 3 major pieces. Other small pieces have broken off in the interim from cleaning and handling, and the mechanism itself, when originally found and stored, went unnoticed for 2 years. It was a lump of corroded bronze and wood, and the museum staff had many other pieces with which to busy themselves. There are 82 known fragments to the mechanism. 7 are mechanically significant and contain the majority of the mechanism and inscriptions. There are also 16 smaller parts that contain fractional and incomplete inscriptions. But what does the mechanism actually do? The Antikythera mechanism is now understood to be dedicated to astronomical phenomena and operates as a complex mechanical computer, in quotes, which tracks the cycles of the solar system. The mechanism is fairly complex, and I will not be going into incredible detail about it, but if you're interested in learning more about this piece, there are plenty of sources you can find online. Starting with the front face, the front dial has 2 concentric circular scales, which represent the path of the sun through the heavens as a geocentric model, or a model showing the Earth in the center of the solar system as opposed to the sun, which would have been used. The outer ring is marked off with the days of the 365-day Egyptian calendar, and on the inner ring, there is a second dial marked with the Greek signs of the zodiac, which is divided into degrees. The outer calendar dial can be moved against the inner dial to compensate for the effect of the extra quarter day in the solar year, by turning the scale backwards 1 day every 4 years. At least 2 pointers indicated positions of bodies upon the ecliptic, a lunar pointer and sun pointer. What is interesting about the lunar pointer is that it did not indicate movement uniformly around a circular orbit. It allowed for the acceleration and deceleration typical of what we know today as an elliptical orbit. In addition, according to Michael Wright, who in 2006 completed what is to be believed an almost exact replica of the mechanism, has shown that there was a mechanism to supply the lunar phase in addition to the position. The indicator was a small ball embedded in the lunar pointer, half white and half black, which rotated to show the phases of the moon from new moon to full moon graphically. The data to support this function is available given the sun and moon positions as angular rotations. It is essentially the angle between the two translated into the ball's rotation. It requires a differential gear, a gearing arrangement that adds or subtracts two angular inputs. The Antikythera mechanism has many firsts for itself, and is also the first verified construction of a deliberate differential gear scheme in history. The rear face has 5 different dials. The metonic dial is the main upper dial. It covers 235 months in 5 rotations of the dial, following a spiral track with a follower on the pointer that keeps track of the layer of the spiral. The pointer points to the synodic month, counted from new moon to new moon, and contains the month's names in Corinthian. The metonic dial has 2 secondary dials. One is the calippic dial, which follows a 76-year cycle, or 4 metonic cycles, indicating which of the 4 metonic cycles is the current one in the calippic cycle. There is also the Olympiad dial, which is the only pointer on the instrument which travels in a counterclockwise direction as time is advanced. The dial is divided into 4 sectors, each of which is inscribed with a year indicator and the name of 2 Pan-Hellenic games, the crown games of Isthmia, Olympia, Nemea, and Pythia, and 2 lesser games, Na, held in Dodona, and another games which has yet to be deciphered. The main lower spiral dial is known as the Saros dial. The Saros cycle is 18 years and 11 1/3 days long, and is defined as the cycle of repetition of the positions required to cause solar and lunar eclipses, and therefore it can be used to predict them. Not only the month, but the day and time of day. There are glyphs for each of the cells, and they show whether the eclipse is solar or lunar and give the day of the month and hour. Obviously, solar eclipses may not be visible at any given point, and lunar eclipses are visible only if the moon is above the horizon at the appointed hour. The last dial is the Exeligmos dial, the secondary dial to the Saros dial. It has a 54-year triple Saros cycle. Since the length of the Saros cycle is to 1/3 of a day, 8 hours, a full Exeligmos cycle returns counting to integer days. Thus, the dial pointer indicates how many hours must be added to the glyph times of the Saros dial in order to get the exact eclipse times. But how accurate is the Antikythera mechanism? According to Tony Freeth and Alexander Jones, investigating into simulating the mechanism to test the theory and also examining mechanical workmanship of the actual mechanism, a combination of inadequacies in the Greek theory at that point of time, and the inevitable looseness in the mechanism due to the hand-built gears with their triangular teeth, and the frictions between gears and in bearing surfaces, the mechanism was too sophisticated for its time, and its design conception exceeded the engineering precision of its manufacture by a wide margin, with considerable accumulative inaccuracies in the gear trains, which would have cancelled out many of the subtle anomaly corrections built into its design. However, it is a conception of pure genius. The Antikythera mechanism is still investigated to this very day, analysis continuing to use the very latest technologies today, in the form of the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project, which is an international collaboration of academic researchers, supported by some of the world's best high-technology companies, which aims to completely reassess the function and significance of the Antikythera mechanism. The project is under the aegis of the Hellenic Ministry of Culture and has received strong backing from the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, and has published many new findings from 2005 to the present day in the scholarly journal Nature. As of 2014, a new survey on the Antikythera Rex site has been announced. Thanks for watching, everybody.